the Scott Fox After 9. Brand new week underway, and there is a lot to talk about on this episode. I'm going to tell you now that this one is going to be a mainly audio episode. I've got a lot to play for you and on various different topics, stuff that I think you should hear, and it'll give you a good snapshot, maybe an alternate perspective into what's going on in the world, because it seems like there's a lot going on. So on this episode, we're going to talk about President Trump. He is going to come up in this episode. I'd love to just leave it, but he was talking a lot this weekend, so we'll talk about that. I'm going to talk about the Epstein files as well. Calls are growing louder, and even though President Trump is basically taunting his own base, telling them, drop this Epstein stuff, I don't think MAGA is ready to drop it, and I don't think regular folks are ready to drop it either. Some horrible stuff happened here, and I think people have had enough. They want answers. So I'm going to play the audio from that. We're going to talk today about the hockey fight. You saw that video last week? Bang, bang, bang. I've never seen somebody punch somebody and yell bang as the fist is making contact. Never seen anything like it. It was great. There's now a response from the guy who got beat up, and he's actually apologizing. You're going to hear that in this episode of After 9. Plus, we've got a couple other things. The cabinet is going to be meeting tomorrow to discuss this round of tariffs. I'm just going to say it. This isn't necessarily a criticism of the prime minister, but he's the one who's been insisting that this is an emergency for a long time now. I don't understand why this wasn't done right away, but we'll get to that when it comes up. And the tax dollars that we send to Ottawa are being misspent again. So that is also on my radar. Let's get to it. I'm going to start off with something that I think Canadians should want to hear. This is an interview that was done over the weekend with Don Cherry. And it was done by Joe Warmington from the Toronto Sun. Joe's a reporter that I've got just a ton of respect for. I think that's a good level-headed journalist who still believes in journalistic integrity, and he is one who will often try and tell the other side of the story. And I don't say that about many print journalists, but Joe is great. And you probably recall Don Cherry, former icon on Hockey Night in Canada, lost his job over some comments that were made about immigrants not respecting Remembrance Day and the sacrifices that were made for our freedoms that we enjoy today. Well, Don has been in basic obscurity for a while now, and Joe Warmington wanted to find him and wanted to find out how he's feeling now. I'm going to play about a minute and a half of this interview that Joe did with Don Cherry. Listen to a little bit of what Don Cherry, Grapes, had to say.
That you'd like the records set straight on the story.
I'm very disappointed in Ron that he would bring this up, and I'm very disappointed in him that he would reach back 5 years and do this.
Is he still welcome here and to call you and your friend, or is this friendship?
No, with the wife he isn't.
And how do you feel about it?
I don't have any feelings. I don't have any feelings towards Ron.
This is your wingman for almost, whatever it was, almost 40 years.
40 years. Almost 40 years.
And there's a sense of kind of almost like a betrayal a bit.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. But I know one thing, I'm disappointed in him.
Have you talked to him?
No.
And do you want to talk to him about it, or?
No, I don't want to talk to him about it.
These stories that are being written about you now, did anybody contact you?
No.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, you think the only guy to contact me is you.
It's just basic.
Nobody. I was really surprised when Louis give me that story.
I'll leave it at that. And I highly recommend that you follow Joe. It's Joe_Warmington, WARMINGTON on X or whatever platform you happen to use. It was a great interview, and I'm glad somebody got the other side of the story from Don Cherry. Some stories have started to leak out about the years that Don and Ron were together. The Ron that he's talking about in that clip is Ron MacLean. And while Don Cherry got fired, many people noticed that Ron MacLean stayed on. And he still has a booming career in the hockey world, whereas Don Cherry was basically just thrown to the wolves. left to navigate that on his own. And I didn't think it was right. A lot of people didn't think it was right, but that is exactly how it went down. I feel a lot for Don Cherry, and I think my feelings on Ron MacLean have evolved a little bit after hearing some of that. But either way, that is the response that Don Cherry had to some unflattering rumors that have been floating around out there. I'm going to leave it at that. Good words from Grapes. Nice work by Joe Warmington. And now let's move on. You likely saw that hockey fight. The hockey fight on a golf course because two guys were taking way too long. And then the foursome behind him caught up, and what started off as a yelling match and some taunting back and forth turned into blows. I'm going to play the response, the actual apology from the guy who got beat up in that video. Here's him explaining with just a little bit of the video so you have some context. Listen to this.
It's around the goal. I got it all in.
That's me, guys. The guy that got dropped like a bucket of balls in a pond. Not my finest moment, I know. Looks real bad. Played 36 holes of golf. We drank way too much, and my mouth ran faster than my brain. All jokes aside, guys, I'd like to apologize to all the folks on the course, anyone caught up in it, and anyone who had to deal with me that day. I lost my cool, and I've learned from it. Just one of those days where you should have kept the cart on the path, you know. Stay hydrated, keep your stick on the ice, maybe stick to 18.
Good on him. I think that's great. He recognizes that he was way too drunk, he'd played way too much golf, and he was out of line. Now, holding up other golfers, bad etiquette, but it's certainly not the first person. He's not the first person to do that. It did turn into a fight that did turn into quite the spectacle, and he's apologizing for his role in that. Is he the only one who owes an apology, though? Because I'm wondering is it Tarnowski, the former hockey player who was doing the punching? Does he share any blame here? And should he also be apologizing? I'm kind of wondering. You know, this was an apology from the guy who got beat up, and whether it was deserved or not. And I don't know if everybody's going to agree on whether or not that beatdown was deserved. Either way, he's apologizing. How many people can relate to that? You know, I'd had way too much to drink. I let my mouth run faster than my brain. That hits. That's relatable to a lot of people, myself included. How many people have done something or said something when they were drunk and regretted it later? He's being the bigger man and he's apologizing. I think that's wonderful. I wish more people would do that. It would probably calm down the temperature that we're dealing with right now, because it seems like everybody's amped up over everything. And as great as that fight was to watch, I am glad now to see that cooler heads have prevailed. There's an apology. I don't know if we'll get one from Tarnowski or whatever his name is, but if we do, I think that's appropriate as well. And then let's forget this. Fun for a while. Let's move on and realize that everything is okay. You just can't play slow like that on a golf course. And if you do, that's totally fine. If you're a slow golfer, a new golfer, no problem. Just step aside, let the group that's behind you that's playing a little bit faster, let them play through, and then you can take all the time you want. An apology from that guy, and I think that's great news. Now let's move on to something else that happened over the weekend. Friday. It drives me crazy when politicians do this because it's so predictable. I hope that everybody can appreciate what goes on here. When the government wants to drop some news that they know is not going to be popular, they do it on a Friday afternoon or a Friday evening. Now, why do they do that? Well, because they realize the landscape of the media industry. They realize that there's not a lot of people working on a Friday, particularly in the summer, and weekends. There's not a lot of people talking about news. On weekends, people have got their own things going on, going to the beach, people over, going to visit, doing whatever. So it's a way of burying the story. When the government puts out a story on a Friday, especially in the summertime, you can know for sure that's news that they don't want discussed. If it's something positive that they want discussed, they'll put that out into the regular 24-hour news cycle, not on a Friday. Well, this past Friday, the Prime Minister's office finally released what Mark Carney's conflicts are. And you'll recall this came up during the election. Mark Carney is very, very wealthy. He's been a banker for a long time. His wife works in industry. She is also quite popular and successful. Mark Carney has ties to Brookfield and many other companies, and people wanted to understand, what are your financial conflicts? We don't want a prime minister making decisions that could enrich himself. And that's why typically a politician will put all of their assets into a blind trust where whatever they do in office, they don't know if that's impacting their investment. Well, in this case, it's going to be a lot harder to do because there's over 100 of them. Over 100 different conflicts that Mark Carney has to recuse himself in decision making for because he has a financial interest in that. Let's go back to the election. This is Mark Carney being asked a question about his assets.
Rules say that those assets should be publicly disclosed within 120 days, which means you'll campaign in a coming federal election, most likely within the next 120 days, and are serving as Prime Minister now, with Canadians not being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you sought to avoid.
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
Are you saying you are not open to any conflict of interest?
Yes.
Trump spent most of his entire life in the private sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will. I have served in the private sector. I have stood up for Canada. I have left my roles in the private sector at a time of crisis for our country. I'm complying with all the rules. Your line of questioning is trying to invent new rules. I'm complying with the rules that Parliament has laid out and the responsibilities of the Ethics Commissioner. And I will continue to comply with those rules.
That's very misleading of the Prime Minister. And that was a fair question from that journalist. Was that Rosemary Barton, by the way? I kind of forgot about that. Well, the question was, when do you plan to disclose your conflicts? She said it herself. It's very hard to believe you don't have any. You're the Prime Minister now. Typically, there's a 120-day window after election where you have to disclose your conflicts, disclose what your assets are. Because again, we don't want a Prime Minister to make decisions based on what might help their financial portfolio. That's just not right. It doesn't happen. It's not supposed to happen with any leaders. Well, Mark Carney wouldn't tell us, and they knew. He knew all along what investments he had. He knew all along what conflicts his wife might have. And obviously it's his wife, so her conflict is his conflict as well. Why did he wait until now and drop it on a Friday, all of his conflicts? Again, over 100 of them. And he now has to recuse himself. Even that is a little misleading. It really is. Here's why. The Prime Minister knows what investments he has, and whether he's actually directing his portfolio right now or he's got someone looking after it for him, which is apparently what's going on, he still knows what assets he has. What he likely should have done was liquidate his investments, put the money into a trust, and when he's not Prime Minister anymore and he doesn't have the final say over what companies get grants, what companies get government contracts, what companies get this and that, then he can get back into the investment world. But when he's in a position to make decisions, he should not be able to make decisions that can personally enrich him or his family or his friends. This, I think, was very dishonest of the Prime Minister. I've been very fair to Prime Minister Carney since he got elected. I've been fair. I've given him a lot of runway here, but I did want to know what his conflicts were. Now we know what his conflicts were, and frankly, I don't think that's acceptable. More than 100 different conflicts, 100 different businesses that he's going to have to recuse himself from the decision-making process if they happen to come up in the business of government. You know, he's got, let me give you a wild example. Let's say Mark Carney owns a company that makes modular homes. Well, we know, and by the way, he does. Then we know, he's got an investment in it anyway. Seriously, you can't make that up. He wants to go all in on modular homes for Canadians. It stands to reason that his company would greatly profit from that, which means he would greatly profit from that. That's not supposed to happen. That's not the way this is supposed to work. But maybe I'm old school. Maybe I'm just expecting too much in the way of integrity from our politicians. And by the way, I'll say it just in the name of being fair. Donald Trump is in a very similar situation south of the border. Donald Trump knows exactly what his assets are, and he can say, they're in a blind trust. I don't manage my own investments. His son is managing them. You don't think he talks to his kid? Come on. This isn't right. Leaders are not supposed to be in this situation. There's not supposed to be any conflict. And it seems like as soon as you get into office, then you can do whatever you want. Don't feel like disclosing? Don't disclose. Just obstruct. Hopefully the voters will go for it. In Canada's case and in America's case, they did. And here we are, leaders that have conflicts. One more note about the Prime Minister, loosely about the Prime Minister. As you know, he is living on the grounds of Rideau Hall. Rideau Hall is where the Governor General's residence is. That is one of our national institutions, Rideau Hall. Well, the Prime Minister and his family are living at Rideau Cottage. That's where Justin Trudeau and his family used to live. Here's the thing. They've now decided that they're going to build an ice rink on the grounds of Rideau Hall. So that would be an ice rink, presumably for the Governor General and for the Prime Minister. I assume they'll open it up to folks. Maybe they'll do something with the NHL or the OHL or something like that there eventually. I don't know what the whole plan is, but it's kind of neat to think that in Ottawa, you could go skating at Rideau Hall. Neat. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is the price tag. Over $330,000 to build an ice rink? That can't be serious, but it is. $330,000 to build an ice rink at Rideau Hall. Now, if you're not in procurement, you may not understand that that's a hell of a lot of money to build an ice rink. Do we really have $330,000 to spend right now? I think even in our personal lives, we can agree there's needs and there's wants. We want an ice rink, but we don't need an ice rink. And when money is as tight as it is this really the best time to be spending $330,000 on a want, not need? Again, I agree with them. Build it. That's kind of cool. I think that's nice. I think families will enjoy that. I think people in the Ottawa area will enjoy it. Tourists may come and do it. I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with the ice rink, but are we shopping around? I had a similar criticism for Premier Ford here in Ontario a few weeks ago when the parking garage at the new Ontario place came up. They're spending a heck of a lot of money to build a parking garage that probably should not cost as much as they say that one's going to cost. Same thing here. I'm all in on building an ice rink. Could we not get some dads together with a 2-4 and a bucket of KFC and tell them, hey, put it up? Because I'll bet you we could get it done for under $1,000. All in. We're spending $330,000 to build this. That's a heck of a lot of money, and I really don't know that we have that money right now. And that scares me when government is spending money so willy-nilly and not giving adequate consideration to what's at stake here. I'm going to move on because there's a lot of topics to get to today, and I promised you a lot of audio. Now I want to go to U.S. President Donald Trump. He did a whole bunch of media this weekend, and he put out some real weird tweets or truths or whatever it is he calls them. He puts them out on his social media platform, Truth Social, and then usually someone there will take it and copy it and put it on Instagram, X, Facebook, and what have you. One of the things that President Trump mentioned this weekend is his ongoing hatred of Rosie O'Donnell. They did not see eye to eye when the president was president the first time, when he was 45. And Rosie O'Donnell has now gone to Ireland, said she didn't want to be in Trump's America. Trump actually threatened on the weekend via Truth Social to revoke her citizenship. You can't do that. Come on. You can't do that. You can't take a born and bred American citizen and revoke their citizenship. It just does not work like that. It doesn't matter how much you dislike them. You can't revoke someone's citizenship. Well, the president did get asked about that this weekend when he was boarding or coming off of Air Force One. He had to go to New Jersey for the FIFA World Club Cup. I don't even really know what that is or why they do it. I know it's new, but not my thing anyway. I'm not a huge soccer fan. So I'll skip over that part. But what he did have to say on various topics was kind of interesting. This is the president talking about Rosie O'Donnell.
Rosie O'Donnell, she went on Chris Cuomo's show recently. She blamed you for the fact that she's overweight, depressed, and drunk. What do you say to that? Do you think PDS is going to ever be a DSM-5 diagnosis?
I don't know about Rosie. I watch Rosie. Rosie's a mess. She's a mess. But she left our country, which is a good thing, not a bad thing.
He doesn't need to do that. He's the president of the United States. He's the leader of the free world. He doesn't need to do that. What is he thinking? You don't threaten to revoke an American citizen's citizenship. How can you even do that? People are allowed to come and go in and out of the country. I get that he doesn't like Rosie O'Donnell, but that, in my estimation, wildly inappropriate. The president did have other things to say on various other topics. Let's talk about him talking about capital gains, because here's one where I actually happen to agree with him.
What do you think about this new bill that's going to basically eliminate no capital gains tax on home sales to be able to free up the money? People who've owned a house for a long time can't afford to pay the capital gains.
Yeah, well, we're looking at that, and it could be a very big positive. I don't think for you, because you make so much money, it doesn't matter. But I think it's going to be a great incentive for a lot of people that really need money.
I happen to agree with the president on that. I don't think the government has any business taxing capital gains on home sales. That's something that's been talked about here in Canada for a very long time, or taxing the equity that you have in a home. I think the government has got to stay out of our homes altogether. Hey, listen, if you put down the down payment and you're paying the mortgage, and maybe, God bless you, if you actually paid it off, it's yours. Maybe we can talk about a little bit of property tax, a little bit, to maintain civic services. But capital gains on a home sale is crazy, whether it's your primary residence or not. You bought it, you should be allowed to sell it, and that money should be yours. The government doesn't deserve a cut. So that is interesting that he's talking about that. And, this is part of my conflict with Donald Trump. He's got some good stuff just like that. Cleaning up the border. Things like that. Those are all good things that I think America needed. The problem is he's just a hot mess of drama, and he's really screwing with us here in Canada, and I don't like it. I get that he's trying to bully himself into a better deal, but man, is it ever frustrating to watch this whole thing play out. Let me play another clip from that set with reporters. Yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of when President Trump was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania. The 1-year anniversary. Here's the president being asked about that.
On this 1-year anniversary of Butler, what was going through your mind this morning when you woke up? I know that you're praising God you're alive, but a lot of people want to know how you're taking this day on this 1-year anniversary.
God was protecting me. Maybe because God wanted to see our country do better or do really well, make America great again. But God was protecting me, Brian. I'll tell you, it's the more you think about it, the more you see it. But no, I don't like to think about it much. I have a job to do, so I don't like to think about it much. It's a little bit of a dangerous profession being president, but I really don't like to think about it too much. I think you're better off not thinking about it.
Okay, so God saved Donald Trump so that Donald Trump could make America great again. Interesting. Okay, hey, whatever the reason, glad he's not dead. Don't want to see anybody dead. But yesterday was the 1-year anniversary. We still don't know a whole lot about that. You got to know that the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, whomever, they know every detail about that shooting. But it seems like every time new information comes out about it, it seems like a lot of people were quite content to just let that happen. I think the most fascinating thing about the assassination attempt of Donald Trump a year ago yesterday was the fact that at that point, CNN had not covered one single presidential rally. Not one. The very first one that they covered was that day in Butler, Pennsylvania. CNN was right there with cameras rolling. What are the odds of that? That seems really strange to me. I mean, maybe it's nothing, but it comes off a little red flaggy. I'm going to play one more from the president here, and then I've got some other audio for you, too. In this one, the president is talking about the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell is kind of like the American version of Canada's son of a bitch, Tiff Macklem. Tiff Macklem runs the central bank in Canada. Jerome Powell runs it in America. And as you know, central banks right now have got interest rates sky high. Way, way, way too high. They're making a lot of money off of it. Banks are being handed money that they never thought they were going to get. They agreed to finance your home for, say, 2% interest. And now the central bank has allowed them to raise that to 4%, 5%, sometimes more. That's not right. It's not right. And they're doing it under the guise of, we need to keep these rates high because that's the only way to fight inflation. I've always disagreed with that. I never thought that was right. What we are seeing in inflation right now, I think, is the result of greed. Let me give you an example. Yesterday, I had to go out shopping for deodorant. We run out, right? It's real hot right now. You don't want to be without the deodorant. Sometimes you got to do multiple applications, but wear it. So I'm going through at Shoppers Drug Mart looking for the best deal on deodorant. What specific supply chain issue caused deodorant to go from $3.99 to $9.99, $10.99, $12.99? It's into double digits for deodorant. The same Old Spice deodorant that they used to have sitting on the shelves for months on end because nobody wanted it is now $12.99. You've got to be kidding me. Why is that? Did the deodorant manufacturers realize, well, everything else has gone up. Let's raise the price of this and we'll just get more money from people? Was there some sort of supply chain issue there? Is that a carbon tax thing? I don't understand. And that's just one example that we all see in our everyday lives. The prices have gone through the roof. Now, will raising interest rates stop that? Well, their theory is if we take all the extra money out of the middle class's pocket, they won't be able to buy deodorant. And when they can't buy deodorant, that'll force those companies to lower the price. I swear to God, that's what they're doing. That's what they think is needed here. They think that by having high interest rates, folks won't have enough money to go out and shop. And if nobody's out shopping, prices will have to come down. Well, yeah, maybe prices will come down, but you're bankrupting people in the meantime, sucking all of the extra cash out of their pocket. We have a interest rate announcement coming in Canada at the end of July. Economists were expecting them to hold the rate or lower the rate. Now it's looking like it's hold the rate or increase the rate. Why? Because of those jobs numbers that came out last week that I still don't believe, that says we created 83,000 new jobs. We didn't. That's craziness as far as I'm concerned, but that's just me. Anyway, back to the chair of the Federal Reserve in America. His name is Jerome Powell. Now, Donald Trump is quite right in advocating for lower interest rates. He says it would be better for everybody if interest rates were lowered. And no, the banks don't need any more of our money. They make a lot of money off of a mortgage. We don't need to give them an extra couple of points on interest on top of what they're already making. So President Trump wants rates lowered, or he wants Jerome Powell gone. Here's him commenting on that.
Jerome Powell's been very bad for our country. We should have the lowest interest rate on earth, and we don't. He just refuses to do it, and yet he's spending $2.5 billion rebuilding the Fed, the Federal Reserve building. And I don't know what he knows about building, but you talk about cost overrun. So he got this approved, and he started the work during the Biden administration. And he doesn't look like the kind of a guy, frankly, that wants to spend $2.5 billion. And it's very interesting because out of 71 economists, one person, me, and then one other person, I think from Wharton, got it right. And the others were all wrong in terms of the success of our country this quickly. We have no inflation. We have cash pouring in. It was me and somebody else. And I can tell you, I don't need 5,000 people working for me behind the scenes like Jerome Powell to tell him what he should say once a month, because they got it wrong. The Fed got it wrong. I call him too late. He's always too late. Every point costs us $360 billion. Think of that. And we should be 3 points. That's almost $1 trillion. Approximately $1 trillion less we should be just with the signing of a piece of paper. So we'll see what happens. I mean, you're telling me he's going to quit. I hope he quits. I don't know that he's going to quit, but he should quit because he's been very bad for the country.
I think they should all quit or fire them. Fire them. We got Tiff Macklem, that son of a bitch, up here in Canada. Is anybody checking his work? Because it really kind of seems like nobody is checking the work here. These guys are just willy-nilly doing whatever they want, paying themselves an absolute fortune. And I don't think anybody can look around right now and say that our country is doing well. I don't think any single person can. It's insanity that these central bankers are just allowed to call the shots with no checks and balance, that our government can't step in and say, whoa, You're not raising interest rates again. In fact, anytime somebody challenges the chair of the Federal Reserve or the head of the central bank, they get accused of interference. That's not interference. We should all be advocating for lower interest rates. Again, the only people who benefit from higher interest rates are the actual banks themselves. It's crazy. One more from Donald Trump, and then I'm going to get to the Epstein files. President Trump here talking about President Putin. Donald Trump said he could end that war between Russia and Ukraine. I believe he said he could end it in 24 hours, if I'm not mistaken. Well, the war still rages on, and it seems like the president is blaming Vladimir Putin now. Listen to this.
Are you going to be announcing sanctions on Russia tomorrow? We're going to see what we will see tomorrow, okay? We have the Secretary General, as you know, Europe has announced sanctions. But I am very disappointed with President Putin. You know, I thought he was somebody that meant what he said, and he'll talk so beautifully, and then he'll bomb people at night. We don't like that. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I'll leave it there. By the way, in case you're wondering, the audio that you hear here is all at different levels, and there's different things going on because it was all recorded by different reporters. Reporters would ask their question, they'd post their question and answer, and everybody seems to be going with different sound levels and inputs, and some are left channel only, some are right channel only. It's wild. But anyway, you get the idea of what the president had to say. He says he's not impressed with Vladimir Putin. What's he doing about it? America carries a very big stick. Donald Trump was implying that if he wanted this war over, it would be over. It's not over. So what's the end game here? When is this war going to be over? Because one thing I do agree with the president on is there's way too many people losing their lives here. Way too many. Ukrainians, Russians, North Koreans who are, for some reason, they're helping out the Russians. I don't understand why. But either way, there's way too much loss of life here. We've got to bring this war to an end. Now I'm going to switch topics. I have a couple of things that I want to play for you on the Jeffrey Epstein situation. Before the weekend, the president put out an extremely condescending truth on his social media site, telling people to drop the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. You guys got to drop it. We've got other things to deal with in this country. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, people are not ready to drop it. They're not. They want to know what happened. And what's interesting here is this story has gone mainstream enough that it's not just MAGA folks. It's not just those who live their life on social media following every twist and turn in the political landscape. It's regular people. This is a conversation that's happening now in backyard barbecues. This is a conversation that's happening on transit. Regular people are starting to connect the dots on what happened here. And fortunately, the vast majority realize what happened here was wrong. It was completely wrong, and it goes to the heart of government corruption. It's really crazy what went on this Epstein thing, and the full extent of it, I think we're going to find out, but I can't say for sure. I think we're getting to a point where even Donald Trump is starting to realize this is not going to go well for me in the midterms next year if I don't release more, because there are hardcore MAGA fans that would rather sit that election out, stay home and not vote, than vote for a Donald Trump that doesn't release the Epstein files. You know who's been a very vocal critic of the president here is someone who you would have expected would have been on his side. Tucker Carleson, a powerful voice in the MAGA movement. Well, this weekend was Turning Point USA, big conference. Tucker Carleson was speaking at it. This is a 3-minute clip, and I'm not going to play the whole thing. But I want to play a little bit for you of what Tucker Carleson said to a captive audience at this conference regarding the Epstein files. These are Tucker Carlson's words. Listen to this.
I mean, the guy was some weird sex freak who was abusing girls. We knew that. But the fact that the U.S. government, the one that I voted for, refused to take my question seriously and instead said, case closed, shut up, conspiracy theorist, was too much for me. And I don't think the rest of us should be satisfied with that. And by the way, let me just say really quickly, because I was so mad about it that I think I found out part of what's going on. I think we are going to find out more. And I think the truth, for whatever it's worth, in case you're interested, is that the DOJ didn't release lots of incriminating sex videos with Epstein and his billionaire pals because they don't have them. They don't have them because when the original search warrant was served 2007, I think, possibly 2006, I think 7, it was basically designed to protect Epstein. The search warrant was written in such a way to make sure that the feds never got their hands on the actually incriminating evidence. It's another way of saying the cover-up has been going on since 2007, almost 20 years. And so the real question is not, was Jeffrey Epstein a weirdo who was abusing girls? Yes, we can answer that. The real question is, why was he doing this, on whose behalf, and where did the money come from? And those are the questions that need to be answered. And I think it's entirely fair to ask them. And it's not adequate to say anyone who asked them is somehow desecrating the memory of little girls who died in Texas. I'm not going to put up with that answer. I don't care who gives that answer. That is not acceptable. And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying that. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that. I've spent my entire life pretty much in Washington, where I knew and loved a number of people, including one very close person who worked at CIA. That has never prohibited me from saying, I think the CIA has done some horrible things, murdered a bunch of people, participated in the murder of a sitting U.S. president.
I'm going to leave it right there, but if you want to go back and watch it, by all means do that. SAS Tucker Carleson. He said a lot there, a lot about the Epstein files. He's suggesting that this has been being covered up since 2007. He suggested that Jeffrey Epstein may have worked for an intelligence service, and it likely wasn't an American intelligence service. I'm not going to go any further on that because I have no evidence on that. And part of the reason I don't is because they won't release the damn files. What files are there? In President Trump's condescending tweet or truth from the weekend, he implied that, interesting, he said Jeffrey Epstein, the man who never dies. There's a lot of people who think Epstein's not dead, that he didn't hang himself in jail. He was broken out of jail. A lot of people believe that he's actually not dead. And I can't even write off that theory. Maybe there's something to it. We do all agree this guy was a perverted sex pig. But what beyond that? Was he working for another government? Was he working for the American government? And what was all of that dirt that he collected going to be used for? You know, if he could lure in a U.S. president and get video of them doing something unthinkable with an underage person, you can control that person. You can tell them, hey, listen, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and you'll do that. Or the tape comes out. That's how the blackmail worked. We need more. We need more. And I am so disappointed in Donald Trump that he has taken this attitude towards the Jeffrey Epstein situation after he promised us transparency. And that's all I'm going to say about that. One more that I want to play from Tucker Carleson, and I think that this is a real good clip. One of the things that has frustrated me as somewhat of a journalist, I guess I'm a digital journalist. I'm certainly a broadcaster. I don't know if I would call myself a journalist. But one of the things that frustrates me is the lack of accountability. We have leaders in every country around the world. And some leaders are very good at answering questions from the media. That's part of the media's job, is to hold government accountable. And if the media asks a question of one of our leaders, they owe them a response. But something you likely saw in the years that Justin Trudeau was prime minister is not a lot of transparency. He wasn't answering anything. Even in the House of Commons, where you're compelled to answer questions for fellow legislators. Somebody asked him a question, he would basically ignore them and just go into the talking points that he wanted out in a clip. How can we have a society where our leaders do whatever they want and won't even answer questions about why? Well, this isn't just a Canadian thing. It's also an American thing. And Tucker Carleson talked about that. Listen to this.
I don't like to vote, but I did vote this time. And I don't like to vote because I don't believe in any of them. And this time I really felt like I know Trump well. I love Trump personally. And what we were looking at was just so awful and totalitarian and stupid. And it wasn't even the arguments that I disagreed with from the Kamala Harris. It's weird to even say her name now. Who was that exactly? It was like a bad dream. But it wasn't even so much the arguments I disagreed with, though I definitely disagreed with the arguments. It was the style of argument that drove me completely bonkers, summarized most crisply by "shut up, racist." Whatever you said, it was "shut up, racist." And it's like, but wait, first of all, I'm not a racist, but that's not even the point. The point is, I just told you what I think. I just asked you an entirely legitimate question, mostly, what the hell are you doing? And rather than answer it, you didn't pay me the respect that you would a human being. You treated me like a slave or an animal by telling me to stop barking. Shut up, racist. And I won't put up with that because I'm not a slave or an animal. I'm an American citizen, an adult man who pays his taxes. So, I ask people questions for a living, and very often I get answers that I don't care for, that I disagree with, that I think are stupid. But at least they're answers. At least the person responding is treating me like a human being with a soul created in the image of the Creator. He's paying me the respect that every human being is due. When you ask a direct question to someone in charge, you are due. That person is morally bound to give you an answer. He's not bound to agree with you, but he's bound to stop and answer your question. And the left never did that. They would dismiss you out of hand. You are not worth listening to. Be quiet. And that's, of course, where the impulse to censorship comes from. It comes from the belief that you don't deserve to speak because you're not fully human. They own you. And that's what I voted against above all. I voted against a million different things that I hated about the last administration. Their insane desire to start pointless wars around the world. Their total unwillingness to protect this country domestically, to protect the people who live here, to protect the territorial integrity of the country, bringing in tens of millions of people illegally, giving them free stuff the second they get here, making a mockery of citizenship. I hated all of that. I hated all of that. But the thing I hated most was their total unwillingness to answer any question about why they were doing what they were doing. Because it was just too insulting. And every single time I would just feel like raising the middle finger and screaming obscenities, which is not an adult response, I'll concede, but that's how I felt.
How many people can relate to that? How many people heard that and had that speak to them? I think that was a very, very important clip, and I think that Tucker Carlson is absolutely right. These people that we elect and send them off to Washington or Ottawa or wherever with a blank check, they can basically do whatever they want. They at least owe us some answers, All right, friends, that was a catch-up episode to get you caught up on all the things that happened this weekend, and I think I covered most of them. If I didn't, it'll be in another episode this week. Tomorrow, the great Anna Almeida joins me, and tomorrow we're going to talk about a couple of lighter things, but also about this cabinet retreat that's happening tomorrow in Muskoka with the federal cabinet. I'd like to know what's going on there. I'd like to know what they're doing there and how much it's costing us. That and more in tomorrow's episode of Scott Fox After 9. I'll leave you with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. Hey now. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Oh,